Welcome back to the gutter, the Grindhouse gutter. I'm Josh, and I'm joined here with the Professor Smoak.
Well,
We are,
Merry Christmas.
yeah, and nothing says Christmas like your selection this month. But we are from the All American Spook Show podcast, which you can listen to every Monday at 6 p.m. East, wherever you listen to your podcast, and also right here on the YouTube channel, various ways. And we encourage you to go check out aaspookshow.com as well. But the whole point of Grindhouse Gutter is we let the professor choose something that would have played back in the Grindhouse days, the drive-in days, B movies, stuff like that. So with Christmas in mind, like we said off the top, what did you bring for us this month?
Get those sleigh bells ringing, jing jing jingling for Maniac, right?
This is this is Christmas adjacent, right? Like at best.
Definitely, yeah. I wanted to pick something that because we try to do things seasonal here on the on all of our various shows that we have going on. So I didn't want to necessarily. We've already done on the main show. We've done some of the big ones like Silent Night, Deadly Night, which you could put into this grindhouse format as well. We've done To All a Good Night. I think that was the David
Yeah,
Hess
yeah, that
film.
was last Christmas right here on the Grindhouse Gutter. That was Grindhouse number 6. If you want to go back and check that one out.
Yep, that was a good one, or that was a fun one, anyways, for Christmas. But we did it last year on the regular show. I mean, I could have still done it on Grindhouse Gutter, but I wanted to go with something we haven't done at all yet. And for some reason, because we've been around for what, 5 years now, I believe.
Yeah, over
We've
5. Yeah.
This one, Maniac, is one that I definitely want to get on the regular podcast because this is one that we could definitely do a serious deep dive on. There's so much background information on this movie, from special effects by Tom Savini to William Lustig and what he's done. I mean, he's gone on to do all kinds of things outside of the of filmmaking itself, including releasing films on DVD, such as when he worked with Anchor Bay and then now Blue Underground. So I mean, all kinds of background information we could give on this movie that we don't have time to really go into on a 12 to 15 minute video format like we do here. It's one of my favorite slasher films. I mean, it covers so many genres and subgenres. First of all, that was one of my favorite horror films. Certainly one of my favorite 80s films. One of my favorite slashers. One of my favorite splatter movies. One of my favorite grindhouse films. So there, tons of categories and subcategories that this movie kind of fits into, and it is a classic to some. It's and an infamous, controversial flick to others, I guess you could say.
There's
Ever
also,
since.
just based on what you're saying there too, there's also some exploitation elements here as well,
Oh
right?
yeah, definitely exploitation. Yeah, it as you'll see once we get to the grindhouse rating, it checks plenty of the grindhouse boxes there as far as exploitation. As I mentioned, horror, slasher, splatter. What else? Even though it's not your conventional slasher film by any means, most of your slasher movies, it's if you're talking about like Jason or Freddy and those types of movies, or even the other off the wall kind of slasher movies, you usually have a killer that you don't know who it is necessarily. I mean, well, you might know Jason is, but you don't know what he looks like. You're waiting for an unmasking type thing, right? Or it's a slasher film where you don't know who it is, and it's sort of a whodunit where you're trying to figure out, and there's a twist ending. You're like, oh shit, that's who it was.
Yeah.
Well, this will go immediately right off the bat. Not maybe the first scene, but once you see the first scene, which opens with a kill scene on the beach, which by the way was kind of influenced from Jaws. So it opens that way, and then it goes right into Frank Rizzo's character, which is the maniac, the killer. So this isn't giving anything away. This isn't like if you haven't seen this movie, this is by no means giving anything away. So it's right there at the beginning. You know who it is. There's no who done it, and it unfolds more like a splattery slasher tropes in some ways, but more like a serial killer film, I guess. A gritty sort of, think more like along lines of Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, and it fits more in that category than it does in your typical slasher category.
Yeah, Henry's a good comparison. Also, it kind of the feel of it has some another one that we've done here on the gutter was Miss 45. I think it was on here, right? Yeah. It kind of has that feel to it, right? Same time period.
Yeah, same. Yeah, very. In fact, the exact same time periods. I believe that was, well, close anyways. I think that was 81.
That
Could have been
sounds
80.
right. It was early 80s. But yeah, almost the exact same time period for sure.
Yeah, probably shot around 79, early 80. And also both taking place in New York. That's another thing that you'll find that I love is well, just the Grindhouse gutter itself. We talk a lot about Times Square and 42nd Street, and that I don't know if you call it a golden age for Grindhouse cinema. Yes, golden age. Yeah. Most people would call it a crime-ridden shithole at that. in Times Square at that point in time. But when it comes to the Grindhouse gutter and movies and all that stuff going on, it was the peak era of the Grindhouse. That would have been 70s going into the early 80s. 1980, it's pretty graphic for a movie from that early stages. I mean, yeah, you had plenty of Grindhouse movies that were coming along that had gore scenes in them, but this one's pretty sustained, I think, throughout, and controversial because it's been labeled as misogynistic because most of his victims were women, not all of them.
Well,
but
99% of them, but yeah.
So it's got that, but I mean, it does what it does. It's a controversial, gritty Grindhouse flick that can be scandalous to some, I guess, especially feminists.
I think within the story, though, I mean, and I can see where somebody might see it that way, but I think within the story, there's a reason. We don't go too deep into that spoiler territory, but there's a reason why he's doing what he's doing. So, like, I'm not saying it's justified, but I think within the story,
it
makes sense.
I don't think it's just torture for torture's sake. Like,
no.
As far as I think, like you said, it fits the storyline with what happened to his character as to why you're kind of doing, like, it doesn't excuse it, but I mean, you see it. But this is fiction we're talking about here, so some people, I think, maybe read too much, especially in the 80s. They had that whole thing going on with the later on that would lead to the PMRC and heavy metal and satanic panic, and all this stuff kind of fed into each other, this paranoia over music and violent cinema and that type of thing. So I think most people could see that nowadays, that this is a piece of fiction. It's not trying to be a snuff film, or it's not trying to be this overly torture porn type whatever deal. It fits the storyline. It was splatter, and it was 80s splatter. Even if it was graphic, it still was that type of splatter that's coming from movies like The Prowler, which coincidentally, or not coincidentally, Tom Savini did the effects for that one as well, right? So
and really, that's really the key of this, I think, is it's just William Lustig and Tom Savini just let's just go for it. Let's get crazy.
Yeah, they weren't. He didn't have any plans to submit this thing to the MPAA, so they didn't worry about that. They didn't worry about whether they should or shouldn't shoot this scene because it might get cut. They went into it knowing it was going to get released unrated from the get-go, knowing that it was primarily going to be strictly for the Grindhouse district, even though some other theaters played it, I believe, and that's where the controversy started, because Siskel and Ebert reviewed it, and Siskel basically said he walked out around the 30-minute mark, which is the point where I don't know if we're giving away any sort of kill scenes.
That has to be the Savini. So I think most anyone that knows anything about this movie would know at least that scene, right?
Yeah, the scene where Savini is himself setting up the special effect, but he's the actor in there, and it's the shotgun head explosion.
Yeah,
one of arguably the best shotgun head explosion there has been. I would say it's the best for me. I think it's the
if it ain't the best, it's like top 3. Yeah, I can think of a couple that might come close, but that was brutal, and they stick with it, boy. It's like it's not like I think of the one in Chopping Mall, right? That one happens pretty quick, and then they you get off of it. This one's like, bam! Now let's let you stare at it for a few seconds. Let's see. Oh man.
Yeah, slow motion, like the whole scene is slow motion almost.
We could go on and on about this one, and like you said, I think this one deserves a full podcast episode. So we need to get to this one sooner rather than later on the Spook Show proper. We'll leave it there for now, and we'll talk more about it in depth when we finally get to that. But before we wrap it up here, you've got to give your Grindhouse rating, and you've got to give us your Cleaver rating. So Grindhouse rating 0 through 10, where it kind of lands on what makes it grindhousey, and the Cleaver rating, since it's a horror movie, that's 0 through 5 instead of stars. You're going to give out Cleavers. So first, your gutter rating.
Gutter rating is there's make no bones about it. I'm not going to mince words. I'm not going to take too much time on this. Is a 10. I mean, this is a quintessential Grindhouse movie in the same way that Cannibal Holocaust was. You're not going to get more Grindhousey than this. This is up there, upper level, because of the exploitation element. You've got Times Square itself. You've got Grindhouse within the Grindhouse. I mean, there's plenty of shots of Times Square and of the Grindhouse district and the marquees and all that stuff. So any movie that does that, I'm all aboard for it. A movie that won't be on the Grindhouse gutter, but does feature that type of stuff, of course, is Taxi Driver. Anybody who's seen that can attest to that. That takes place in Times Square during this era, a little bit before 76 when that movie came out. But you see all these same marquees and in Times Square and Grindhouse district. So I love when movies put that in there. It definitely gets some bonus points for that. But yeah, the gore and the grittiness of it, the fact that it was uncut, unrated, not even submitted to the MPA, they're like, fuck the MPA, we don't need that shit. We know what we have, and we're just gonna put it out there. Whatever we make from it, we make from it. So straight up grindhouse aesthetic right there from the get go. Same way that Romero did with Dawn of the Dead, So all of those things together, goriness mixed with the exploitation, mixed with the horror, mixed with all those elements go in to make this. And I think it's a great script. I think for what it is, really good script, not your typical slasher movie.
And Joe Spinell is really acting his ass off in this thing, man. I mean, like,
get into that. Like the deep dive, we'll do it on the actual podcast when we get around to it. There's so much we could go into. Guy's been in Rocky movies. He's been in aforementioned Taxi Driver, like I said, bit right. Roles.
One of the great character actors of the 70s and 80s, Joe Spinell.
Yeah.
And this is like probably one of the rare moments where he's the star of the show, right?
Right, yeah. This and I think the last horror film was another one. Mm-hmm. And this is ones most people are going to know him from this. And if you're just a diehard, Rocky fan, and you can pick him out like that from, he plays a certain role in there. But he's mostly going to be known as the lead in this movie, for better or worse.
I think it's for better.
I think it's for the better. Yeah, I think.
And it's something he was like an executive producer, and it's something that he actually cared about. So yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the reasons that this thing is so good is because of Joe Spinell. So yeah, absolutely, he deserves tons of credit, and I'm sure he would appreciate that.
And unfortunately, he died back in 1989, and he was in the process of getting funding together. Actually, him and whoever else was producing this movie for Maniac Cop 2. I mean, Maniac Cop. Maniac 2, Maniac Cop was also directed by William Lustig, by the way, but that's neither here nor there. Maniac 2, Mr. Robbie, I think it was called. And there is a 10-minute or so short film reel out there that they had put together to get funding for the movie. And that's all, unfortunately, that exists of Maniac Cop 2. So he died right before they were able to start shooting on it, even though they had gathered together all the funding they needed. So,
what's your Cleaver rating then? I think I got a pretty good guess.
Yeah, Cleaver rating. We're going all out on that too. 5 Cleavers. Perfect 10 and a 5. I don't remember how many movies have been that way. I know Cannibal Holocaust was. Did we do Zombie on Grindhouse Gutter? Or no?
Yeah.
Or is that?
Yeah, we did, and that got the same treatment. Yep, 10 and 5.
Yeah, you'll quickly see. Like if you go through these Grindhouse Gutters and you're looking for the ratings, Grindhouse versus the Cleaver rating, you find a 10-5. I'll stand by those 100% as being the prime. And I don't know how many we've gotten so far, but as we do this along, they'll start popping up there. And if you haven't seen too many of these movies and you want to see the best, look for those 10-5s. And if you don't like those, then you're not going to like any other Grindhouse movies, I don't think. If you're dipping your toes into that type of exploitation, over the top type 70s and 80s film genre. So look for those 10-5s, and I don't think you'll be disappointed unless you just don't want, if so, like I said, you not cut out for watching Grindhouse movies, I guess.
Well, we've got yet another one on our hands, but what do you know what we're going to be talking about next month? Another 10-5 candidate? What do you got for January?
So for January, we're gonna go back around to an action one. Haven't done one of those in a while, I think. So I'll go with Rolling Thunder from 1977.
I think that's one I've heard of before, but I don't think I've ever seen it.
I've seen it once, I think back in the video rental days. I mean, it would be late 80s-ish, mid to late 80s, somewhere in there. The movie's from 1977, and it's Tommy Lee Jones is in it.
Well,
it's one of those action, thriller, crime, drama kind of things. So
a completely different taste than Maniac, clearly.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, come back here to the YouTube channel towards the beginning of January, and that'll be how we kick off 2024 as far as the Grindhouse Gutter is concerned with Rolling Thunder. So you want to stay tuned to that, and also stay tuned here to the channel for the other series that we do, including Video Vortex and Hammer Horror in Order. Over on Hammer Horror, we're actually going back and picking up on a couple that we missed along the way. So if you want to check out that series, that one's well worth it. Everything here on the channel, including past episodes of the podcast. And of course, we encourage you to go to aspookshow.com and catch up on everything that is the Spook Show universe. So for Tiana, Will, Donnie, who couldn't be with us, Professor Smoak. I'm Josh. We are from the All American Spook Show, and we'll talk to you next month here on the Grindhouse Gutter for Rolling Thunder.